On this week's episode of the K-12 Tech Talk podcast, we welcome Joey Wender from the Schools, Health, and Libraries Broadband Coalition to discuss the FCC's proposed changes to E-rate. We also discuss the new screen time policy from the nation's second largest school district and a new change to Power School that has some districts scrambling this summer. Thanks for listening.
Live from the NTP studios, this is the K-12 Tech Talk podcast. I am Josh. I am not with my Missouri friend this week. He is on special assignment somewhere. He didn't really say what he was doing. All we know is he's not here with us, Mark. Mark, you are over on the East Coast. You don't have any Scots regaling you with bagpipe music anymore, but you did attend one of the World Cup games, didn't you?
I did. I went to England versus Ghana this week, and it was an absolute blast.
You had to get there how many hours early?
Well, they had like a lottery to do the train down to it, and we got like stuck in the first group. So we were. It was a good 14-hour day. But we had a great time. We had a really good time. It was my nephew who's playing high school soccer, and my dad and my brother and I. So we had a great time, and got to meet some great fans from England and Ghana. And if you've ever been to a professional soccer game, like the World Cup is just 100 times more exciting. So,
and are you wearing a souvenir?
Wearing my England jersey.
Nice. If you're living under a rock, World Cup has kind of taken over America, and the Facebook videos, social media videos of all of these guys, like from Scotland and places like that, visiting Buc-ee's or visiting Mark in Boston, are just absolutely hilarious. They're so fun.
The really fun part, so I don't know if this is a normal Scotland thing, but when they got to Boston, they realized that they're just going to go ahead and put traffic cones on all of our statues' heads.
Yeah, I Googled that. Apparently it's a thing. It's a thing from Scotland.
Oh, it is? Okay. Well, then it's not just they're picking on Boston, but all of our statues have had traffic cones on them, and Boston's just like, whatever, we'll embrace it. Well, 2 days ago, because the Scotland fans have been out of town for about a week, I'm walking through Chinatown, and one of those like dragon statues, there's two of them, and they have cones on top of their heads still. So Boston really misses you, Scotland.
That's funny. Yeah, they're in Miami now, right? Because Scotland is, I guess,
yeah. Miami did not accept the cones thing. They immediately were like, "You're not putting cones on our statues.
Yeah,
take that crap to New England."
So with Chris being on special assignment this week, I guess we're taking all the ads. I mean, we're gonna lump them all together, Mark. We're not gonna sprinkle them throughout, I guess. But we do have an interesting interview with Joey from SHLB. What does it stand for? Schools, Health, and Libraries Broadband Coalition. So yeah, Joey's going to be with us here in a few minutes, but Mark and I are dedicated. We have been doing research this week and watching the news, and we do have some news stories this week, right, Mark?
Yeah, let's jump into it. So
go for it.
This first story is very unfortunate of Lancaster County Day School in Pennsylvania. This has actually been going on for a couple of years now, and now the parents are going public with a lawsuit against the district. Students at that school had created 350 AI-generated deepfake nude images of almost 60 female classmates. So this is not a one-off incident. This was a pretty massive situation. Male students had been taking girls' Instagram photos and circulating the images between November of 2023 and May of 2024. So a very prolonged period of time. Unfortunately, the school did not do anything about it, or at least did not report these images to law enforcement. Now, I don't know about Pennsylvania. I know at least where I am in Massachusetts, AI deepfake does count as child sexual adult material, CSAM. You would need to treat those images the same way you would treat any legitimate or any real images. Because the school did not report it, the school is now facing a federal lawsuit from parents of 13 of the victims, as well as the boys and their parents and 10 AI image generation companies who did not have appropriate protections. 2 students did plead guilty to 59 felony counts of sexual abuse of children and criminal conspiracy. They have received 6-month probation, 60 hours of community service, and $12,000 each in restitution. But the parents have said the school did not do their part in reporting this to law enforcement soon enough. So very, very important case for us to keep in mind. And if your district does not have a process already in place for CSAM, you need to make sure that you do have a process for how you're going to treat that, and that everybody is aware that AI deepfakes count in that same process, that same policy. Now, every state, as I mentioned, every state is a little bit different, but I think you should err on the side of caution and not assume that deepfakes are in a different category.
This is one of those things that's a slippery slope, because there was, what was it, a TikTok channel or an Instagram channel that was cute, funny kids making deepfake videos of like their teachers and principals doing silly things or saying silly things or doing dances, whatever. It doesn't take a big leap to go from that to a very dark place of something like what you just described here in Pennsylvania. I don't know. It's one of those things, once it's out of the bag and it's going to start to spread. Like, that would be a trend and it's going to catch on. And I think leaders in districts would be naive to think that it's not a threat in your district, because it very well is.
It is. It is happening in more and more districts that I'm working with. They're facing small, isolated incidents. And as you can see from this case, if you do not treat it with urgency and care, then that district could be liable for damages, as the Lancaster County Day School has found out with this new federal lawsuit.
Horrible. Bad situation to be in.
Yeah. All right. So last week we talked about the largest school district in the country, New York Public Schools, dealing with some blowback on their AI policy. Now the second largest district in the country, LAUSD, is hitting the other big topic of the summer, which is screen time. So LAUSD has approved a grade level screen time cap at its board meeting this week. And this is a full ban for early ed through first grade. Up to 20 minutes when you get to second grade and third grade, 30 minutes for grades 4 and 5, 60 minutes per subject per week in grades 6 to 8, and 90 minutes per subject per week in grades 9 to 12. Homework screen time counts towards this cap. So this is a pretty aggressive cap. It is going to be phased in starting this year, and all the way the upper grade levels go into effect in January 2027. So this coming January. The policy also blocks streaming and gaming platforms, which again, I think we're already dealing with that. I think a lot of districts have already blocked those things. And then it allows parents to opt out of children bringing devices home. So very, very big deal. This is the nation's second largest school district. A lot of people are going to be watching this very, very carefully. I have mixed feelings on where screen time policy falls into play. I'm not necessarily a fan of hard caps enforced by school committees and school boards, but I do like how they graduated this thing up, 60 minutes per subject per week. We've talked about logistically how would one teacher be able to know what another teacher is doing if you have a hard cap. But this policy basically treats each classroom as its own isolated bubble for screen time. And so one teacher's use of screens is not going to impact the next teacher. It's a little bit easier to manage, easier to monitor.
Yeah, and this is, one of the things in the assessment of this article is one thing that it doesn't address or doesn't state is how this impacts assessment. And we were talking about this in a group I'm in, and that's one of the things I brought up right away. At least the article I read, as like this one, did not reference, okay, how does this impact, if you're doing a reading plan assessment or your state spring assessment. I don't know what California does. So how do those play in? And I think that's my fear with if a state legislature picks up this topic and tries to legislate screen time bans or screen time limits. Those legislators need to be informed enough, and we all know how that can be, to understand that there are certain things that are required either by state statute or from a federal level as far as measurement goes that require technology to be in use. So there has to be some sort of plan in place for that. The other comment, and I brought this up with my superintendent this week because we had we're probably getting a demo of a screen time tool, is what happens, you're in high school and you've got an hour and a half limit or a 2 hour limit, and a kid is messing around watching YouTube videos, game walkthroughs on YouTube videos, let's just say, rather than paying attention and working on an assignment in Google Classroom. How do you differentiate that screen time between the two? One is meaningful education use, where one is not educational use. Can there be some differentiation there? Is that going to lead to school districts implementing more of a stricter filter that filters out some of that non-educational content from YouTube or other sites? I think while it's a good idea, I think it's going to open up an even larger can of worms.
For sure. And all this comes on the heels of another major news article coming out of LAUSD where the superintendent resigned at the beginning of this week. If you remember, the superintendent was on leave after the FBI raided his office and his home, stemming from the AI chatbot fiasco. This is more of a investigation into the company that was behind this chatbot and not their decision to use AI. But obviously, this is a big policy to pass without the permanent superintendent at the helm. So I think a lot of big districts, a lot of people are going to be watching LAUSD this fall and spring as the policy is graduated up into January. But I don't think it's going to be an immediate impact. I think it's going to take a little bit of time before teachers can wrestle with what this actually means and begin to report on the impacts.
Well, and the implementation piece of this, I feel bad for whoever's responsibility that's going to be at LAUSD, if that falls on the ed tech department or IT department. How are you implementing a tool, or is there a tool that will monitor the screen time in use and then somehow disable the device? Where does that responsibility lay to disable the device after a second graders hit that 20 minutes? I think that's an interesting implementation phase that after they do this, I would love to talk to somebody there, how they're doing this.
For sure. All right. Now, this one hit my newsfeed quite a lot this week. And while it's not related to K-12, I think we can obviously talk about a very impactful reason why we need to be paying attention about this in schools. So there has been a Wall Street Journal article called How Hackers Found a Backdoor into the American Living Room that details a pretty expansive threat where foreign state hackers have been using consumer-grade technologies to make their way into your home network, and then use that to elevate attacks and escalate attacks on other companies. A Microsoft security executive actually called Comcast about 6 suspicious IP addresses tied to a breach. That's where Comcast had found that Midnight Blizzard, the Russian SVR-linked hacking group, had accessed a Microsoft senior leadership's emails simply by routing traffic through compromised U.S. home devices. And that allowed them to basically mask their traffic as being coming from a home IP or a US-bound IP address. Something for us to think about is, we've talked a lot about the dangers of consumer-grade technologies in school networks. This drives this point home, and this is the thing I kept thinking of over and over again. We've talked a lot about what happens when a consumer Wi-Fi enabled garage door opener gets installed in your transportation department, when Alexas and Google Homes get used in classrooms. There's a lot of concerns around this one, but this drives home that these consumer living room type technologies don't have the same securities that we expect to have on an enterprise network and can expose great risks when we bring them into our environments. So again, we can't evaluate these technologies, but if you are wrestling with this particular issue in your district, this article might be something for you to keep at the ready for when you need one more reason to say, hey, look, we're not going to start bringing in Best Buy technologies, home consumer technologies, and bring them into our enterprise grade network.
Yeah, and to go even a little bit further off the rails subject-wise, if you haven't listened to Jack Resider's episode about the Wonder Box, it's a similar story to this. Wonder Boxes are sold online, Walmart.com, Amazon, a number of retailers sell them. They turned out to be a giant proxy network with huge vulnerability backdoors, and they were sniffing everybody's internal traffic. The story is pretty interesting, and Jack did an amazing job with that interview, and the security researcher that stumbled upon it did an amazing job. So check that one out. hats off to Jack.
And our last story is one that I normally wouldn't bring in, but this is an update from a company that impacts quite a lot of districts in this country, as well as in Canada, for our listeners up in Canada. PowerSchool, which if you've listened to our podcast for a little while, we've talked about them quite a lot. PowerSchool, one of the largest or the largest SIS in the market, has quietly published a pretty significant update that goes into effect next week on July 1. PowerSchool has allowed third-party plugins into their system and allowed customers to install third-party apps and plugins. Well, as of July 1, all of those third-party apps are going to be disabled and shut off. Any vendor that authenticates into PowerSchool's SIS or exchanges data must go through either a CSV flat file upload, import, export, or you have a signed licensing agreement with PowerSchool to use their API. That includes passing a security review, SOC 2 compliance, a plan for plugin code for inspection and allowing PowerSchool to inspect their plugins. And unfortunately, that comes with a cost. There is a licensing fee associated with this one. So a lot of discussion online about the desire for PowerSchool to do this. Obviously, from the security-minded folks, this does make logical sense that you do need to have a little bit of control over the plugins and apps that are incorporated into your system that your customers are installing on your platform. But other folks have said, this seems a little bit fishy. We know that PowerSchool has had a security breach. But we also know that their finances are probably in dire need of a boost after everything that's happened in the last year. Why not start charging for all the plugins that are in your system? So a lot of concerns either way. There is an FAQ that has been published by PowerSchool. We'll link that in the chat. You're going to find a whole lot more information by logging into PowerSchool's support portal. That includes the impacted third-party plugins, and there are some significant third-party plugins impacted. If you are using ClassLink or Clever or EdLink, as of July 1, those integrations will not work, and you must migrate over to, I'm going to say migrate backwards to using CSVs and flat file uploads. So big impact. It's an interesting thing for them to do, obviously, because we're concerned that this is either a security or a revenue generating decision. But most concerning is the timing of it. For them to make this decision, for this announcement to come out at the beginning of June and to go live July 1 means that a lot of districts are going to come back from summer vacation and find all of their third-party tools, including the ones that they've built themselves, no longer work with PowerSchool.
I understand what they're trying to do, but forcing people back to SFTP and CSV flat files, one, if you're not comfortable pulling that data out of PowerSchool, however that's done, and creating those files, that's a burden. That's a hurdle to get around. Two, Mark, do you know, is PowerSchool's interface or standard, is it similar to like OneRaster, or what is it an open standard that providers can adopt?
This is PowerSchool's API. So you're going to go through their ecosystem. You're going to be licensed from them to use their API, and you have to pay PowerSchool to use this.
Interesting. So it's not an open standard like OneRaster.
No. Nope.
Interesting. So CSV it's going to be. Interesting take there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so one thing that's come up in conversation over on K-12 Tech Pro this week, somebody posted a survey asking the question, for your staff, do you allow them the ability to install any extension in Google Chrome? Or do you maintain an allow list of extensions that staff can pick from to install? Pretty quickly, that survey, it's been there for, I think, a day or two. That survey has kind of settled around 75-25. 75 saying we maintain a list of curated or approved extensions that faculty can pick from. And 25%, say it's the Wild West, man. They can do what they want. We are not a barrier to education. So some of the conversation over there is pretty interesting. If you are a member of K-12 Tech Pro, go over there and take that survey. help us fill out, get some good data there. And if you have any comments, leave a comment over there. If you're not a member of K-12 Tech Pro, I'm doing my best Chris imitation here, Mark. If you're not a member of K-12 Tech Pro, go over and join. Hit the community tab, join, take the sponsored option. They've got sponsors that are willing to pay for your membership over there. That doesn't mean that they get your email address and start hounding you. That's not what happens. You can get free access to the K-12 community forum over there at K-12 Tech Pro.
All right, now you got to do your next best Chris impression and just list off all the advertisers.
Now, you know what I think of when you say that? You're probably not old enough to remember this. Do you remember Micro Machines? The little the guy that did the Micro Machines commercials that was the super fast talker. That's what I envision. Josh. That's gonna be Chris.
That's Chris. Yep.
Yeah, we're just gonna get so many sponsors. He's gonna sound like that fast talking guy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Before we get into the interview with Joey from SHLB with the status of the E-rate request for comment about has E-rate met its requirements and have they done their job? Is E-rate a thing of the past? Let's go ahead and let's hear from Chris, Mark. Let's let him get it over with and play those sponsorship ads.
Hey, let's talk about CDWG. I've used them for like 20 years. I've purchased everything from projector bulb to new projector to computers and Chromebooks to servers, large deployments and services, all kinds of stuff. I'm going to put a link in the podcast description to a couple white papers with them. I can tell you one thing with CDWG over the years. I've always had a great sales rep. I think I probably had 2, 3, maybe 4 over the course of all that time, and I've always had great relationships with the sales reps there. If you're listening to this and you use CDWG, shoot them an email. Let them know that you heard about them on the podcast. Hey, you know what I like about Cybernut? They actually get K-12. They make phishing emails that are school in mind, that are K-12 in mind. They make security training that is K-12 in mind. It's built for K-12. They have gamified micro trainings for faculty, staff, and students that take less than a minute, and people actually finish the trainings. They report phishing emails. Your staff are going to report actual emails that they're getting because of how it works within your email system. So check out Cybernut at cybernut.com. Hey, let's talk about Meter for a second. Meter delivers a complete networking stack, wireless, cellular, all that you're needing. It's built for performance and scale. With Meter, your school can get fast, can get secure, and can get scaled. That great connectivity without the burden of managing multiple providers or tools. You can check out Meter at meter.com/K12 Tech Talk. Hey, once again, thanks for listening. It's you guys listening that lets us take some trips and events and get to go on some adventures this summer. 2 in particular that I want to give a plug to. That's Gamus. Gamus is July 7th through the 10th. We're really excited for that. That's in Savannah, Georgia. You don't have to be in Georgia, K-12 Tech in Georgia to come to this. This is a national conference. And then Midwest Tech Talk is July 20th through the 21st. That's a tech conference in Missouri, but you don't have to be in Missouri, Missouri K-12 Tech to come to that conference is for all as well. And conferences like that are thanks to our sponsors as well. In particular, quick shout out to Fortinet. You can email fortinetpodcast@fortinet.com for all your firewall needs. Email Fortinet. Thanks for listening.
All right, we are joined by Joey Wender from SHLB Coalition. Joey, you are now officially our resident E-rate expert. So every time there's an E-rate issue, we got to have you back on here. Although we would prefer not to have you keep coming back on here.
Yeah, no doubt.
Because when you come on here, something bad is going on with E-rate. So what's going on?
Yeah, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but unfortunately, that is my burden right now. So, Mark, Josh, thanks for having me. Joey Wender, Executive Director of SHLB. The news on E-rate is not great right now. There was action taken today at the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, that could do significant damage to the program. It's just a proposal. It's not a final order. But I'm happy to talk through what they did today, how they got to where they are, and what we're doing about it.
So,
great.
Yeah, how similar is this to kind of what we talked about a couple weeks ago? Brendan Carr released that proposed plan or that request of plan, one to gauge has E-rate served its need? Is it done? He proposed a couple changes to consultants and a couple other things. How close is it to that? Is that what happened today?
Yes. So the issue is, it's a very sweeping item. So Brendan Carr has announced, and has been saying for months, that he plans a quote-unquote top-down review of all 4 programs that are within the Universal Service Funds.
And those 4 are E-Rate, Lifeline, Rural Hospital Connection, and what else?
High cost.
Oh, okay.
So those are the 4 different programs. He started a top-down review of high cost as well as Lifeline. He had not until 3 weeks ago E-Rate, and he has not yet on rural healthcare. So we expected the item to come. The concern, though, with the item on E-Rate is it goes so far as to ask, should the program even exist?
Right. Yeah.
And or should it only be limited to rural areas? Now, if you listen to the chairman, you'd think that the whole item was only about screen time and SIPA, which we can get to in a little bit, as well as you mentioned, consultants and their role in the program. But make no mistake, there are other words written on those pages, and those include, should it even exist? And or should we cut out urban areas completely?
Now,
and
typically,
that's why, I would say, Josh, that's why we're emphasizing that.
Right.
They want to talk about this as a screen time item. I look at this as an attack on school and library funding, particularly for the most needy libraries and schools that receive the biggest discount.
One of the things, when we talked about this a couple weeks ago, when I read through this, you've got 2 competing things, in my opinion. You've got, should we eliminate the program, and then should we use the program to enforce screen time regulations? I don't think you can do both. I don't think you can eliminate the program, eliminate urban districts, eliminate suburban districts, and also enforce the screen time regulations, because that's your forcing mechanism. So do you have any idea if they intend to do both, or if they're only going to do one, meaning eliminate or focus on screen time? Where do you think the FCC is leaning on this?
I have no idea. Absolutely no idea.
Well, and they probably don't either, Joey. Like that's the thing. It's whatever, they're going to throw it against the wall, and whatever sticks, right? Like, I don't know.
I only can respond to the words written on the page. And the words written on the page include both of the currents or both of the themes that Mark is talking about, right? So I have to fight, or I have to push back, or I have to respond on both fronts. I can't take, I have to not accept the belief or the notion that Brendan, I should say Chairman Carr, is not really going to end or cut the E-rate program. I can't operate like that, because that's what's in the item, right? Yeah. I agree that if you want to protect students, I wouldn't cut E-rate. And in fact, I would just look at SIPA and how it's working, and let's talk about the filtering. Like, let's talk about these things. Let's talk about how the FCC is engaging and talking to state and local governments, right? Let's discuss all the efforts happening on the local and state level with respect to cell phone bans and reviewing screen time policies. Let's be promoting the fact that this is ultimately a local school board function. This is an educational pedagogy question about what is actually entering the classroom, right? That's a fine discussion to be having. But it's certainly not the FCC's role to mandate it. This is a connectivity program that brings what is essentially a utility to the doorstep of a school, and then allows it to function within the school so that the school itself can operate, whether that be for education or simply for the thermostat to work, or the security cameras to work, or for the communication system to work. right? Internet, as you guys know, is just as important as
It's
water
ubiquitous.
and electricity. Totally.
Yeah. Well, and that's the biggest concern from districts is you're not going to stop supplying the internet. Therefore, the cost has to come from somewhere, and that's going to come at the expense of our students. The first question, this ultimate question of has E-rate's goal been met, is that a question for the FCC or should that actually be Congress, since they were the ones who established this program in the first place, asking and answering that question?
I think Congress answered that question in the 1996 Act. Congress said, create a year-over-year program that ensures or promotes universal service and accounts for evolving technologies.
Mm-hmm.
That means Congress didn't want this thing to end and that they envisioned it as ongoing support. Remember, E-rate is a discount that provides the most support for the least affluent communities in the country. The idea was if you were in a low-income area, whether urban or rural, you needed more help to pay these internet bills. Because, again, you can't live without it. The building needs the connection. And so to say that E-rate is not necessary anymore, to me is to say, oh, there are no longer low-income communities that need support.
Agree.
There's
completely.
no longer a digital that there is no longer a need for help of school and local budgets to fund their schools.
To me, I think if you wanted to have the argument that, okay, internet connectivity costs have come down. Okay, it is cheaper for me to subscribe to 5 gig of bandwidth now than when I started 15 years ago and I was getting 250 meg. Okay, fine. But I think that speaks to the fact that E-rate itself, the eligible service list, needs to evolve. And they did the pilot program with the cybersecurity items, with EDR and firewall services and stuff like that. That, to me, that's the discussion. If you want to evolve E-rate, you need to make other things available so that we can keep those costs down, so that those less fortunate districts can afford the better protections that they can't or aren't buying now. To me, that's the discussion here.
Let me emphasize that point and make another point that flows from what you just said. E-rate should be modernized, strengthened, and, in fact, expanded.
Agreed.
I wanted to spend this summer talking about the pilot and why we can't wait to the end of the cyber pilot to figure out what are we going to do with cybersecurity.
Right.
Agree.
That's what we should be talking about, because that I hear every day from CTOs from schools around the country. How many attacks am I getting this week? No, how many attacks are ongoing right now, this hour? So let's talk about that.
That pilot was how many years, and they weren't going to make a decision? 3 years, 5 years? It was something
3.
ridiculous. Yeah. So you're going to wait 3 years to even say if that's you could survey CTOs, CIOs, directors across the country. The answer would be overwhelming that the list needs to be expanded, period. You don't need the pilot to tell you that. Every director worth their salt would tell you that now. Like, you don't need to wait to the end of that 3-year pilot to take action on that.
We also know that the demand for the pilot was over $3 billion, and there's only $200 million.
Right.
Exactly.
So we know that. But I think there's another point, though, Josh, that I think is worth emphasizing, because this is something that the commission explicitly discussed in the item. That part of their rationale, at least for potentially limiting support, E-rate support to rural areas, is because there's greater competition in urban areas, in more dense places, and therefore the price of broadband in some places has come down. Well, let's just stipulate or say the words. It's great that the price of broadband has gone down in certain places. That's a good thing. However, E-rate is about need. Okay? It's about need. It's not about how much the service costs. So if you're in a rural area, in the internet, and these are fake numbers, obviously, and grossly under what they are, but if you're in a rural area and internet costs $200 and you're a 90% discount district, you get $180 from the government to help pay the bill. if let's say you're in an urban area and internet access is half, let's say it's $100. Well, you still need the $90. You still need the help. Even though the price of the service is lower, the need is the same, whether you're a 90% district in a rural area or a 90% district in an urban area. It doesn't matter.
Now, playing devil's advocate here, it feels like there's also some questions in here that help to safeguard the program and actually put more dollars in the hands of schools and possibly actually make more room for things like cybersecurity. The issues around the consultants, the use of percentage-based fees on consultants, some of the loopholes, the Kalamazoo loophole, these things feel like they're trying to actually safeguard public dollars and safeguard the program in theory to help that money stretch a little bit farther. Are there things in here that SHLB actually can get behind and support within their proposal?
We are always for enhancing program integrity, right? We have spent 30 years working to improve E-rate and decrease the incidence of waste, fraud, and abuse. GAO commended the program last year in its study when it compared E-rate to 4 other federal programs in different sectors and said that GAO said E-rate is a model program that follows all of the recommendations and requirements for combating waste, fraud, and abuse. So yes, there are things in the second half of the item, in the further notice of proposed rulemaking,
right,
that we can support. Right? There are really good, honest actors out there in the E-rate consultant field that are fine and willing to certify and to do other things to show that they are good actors and they are acting in good faith on behalf of their clients.
That's one of the, when you get a talking head making a statement on E-rate and how it needs to be audited and there's so much waste and abuse. And my comeback to that has been, you clearly have never submitted a 471 and gone through a PIA review. Like you come sit with me and when I ask for a UPS and tell me that there is waste and abuse happening here.
I agree. And this is what we went through with the portal item, right? So they did the competitive bidding portal item a couple months ago. And our response was GAO is commending the program. The issues that the IG and GAO cited years ago have declined. The program is doing better and better. They're citing, and sometimes decades-old incidents as a fraud. They're out of date. So when I hear them say there's rampant waste, fraud, and abuse, my response is, what's the evidence of that in 2026? There is none. There simply is none. It is a well-run program.
Yeah. I would easily agree that the procurement requirements under E-rate were phenomenally more stringent than my day-to-day procurement requirements in a district. So I think anybody who's gone through the E-rate process would have a hard time with that. But again, for me, it does feel like there's a kind of a back and forth of should we get rid of the program, but then the strengthening of it is there are things in there that I think will help and benefit and safeguard the program. So I don't know about you. I think my feedback on this would be both, hey, hold on a second on the screen time issues, the getting rid of it, but let's double down on some of the fraud prevention stuff in there, if possible, if needed.
We met with the commission and we said that those opening questions about should it exist, should you limit it to rural areas, that should be a notice of inquiry. We suggested explicitly they should just break out those items. They should be completely separate discussions. Right, the stuff about consultants, that reads like a true notice of proposed rulemaking.
Yeah.
There are actual proposed rules, and we will comb through it, and I'm sure we will have suggestions. There are ways to tighten it up. Are we achieving the perfect balance between program integrity and just too much burden? We'll go through it, but that is a legitimate conversation. But to attach to that rulemaking, should the program even exist?
Mm-hmm.
Undermines the whole effort.
Joey, how long have you been with Shelby?
I have been in this role for almost a year and a half.
In in the lifespan that you know of E-rate, you clearly have a very historical view of E-rate and things that have gone on with it. How big of a threat do you feel this is? Like level 10, oh my God, freak out level, or level 3, some of this is going to get thrown out. We're going to probably have some changes, but it'll be around and we'll make it through this. What's your gut tell you on this?
10.
Really?
10. And I'll tell you why it's 10. Ted Cruz, the chairman of the Senate Commerce Committee, has been discussing for years his desire to either terminate the E-rate program, subject to 2 annual appropriations, which I've long said is killing the program, or eliminating it, or limiting the program to rural areas. Okay? Now you have the chairman of the FCC, Brendan Carr, who was confirmed by Ted Cruz's committee, asking those very questions in the item itself. The commission officially voted to advance those questions today. This is not theoretical anymore. There's an actual rulemaking that is now underway. Do I think he's going to do it? I have no idea. And I think a lot of that will be dependent upon our advocacy and how much schools and libraries fill the docket at the FCC and tell them, do not do this. E-rate is so important to school districts around the country. So I truly believe it is a jump ball at this point, and I don't know how this thing ends.
Well, that's a perfect question or a perfect segue here. What happened today and what is next?
Sure. So it's a notice of proposed rulemaking, meaning under the Administrative Procedure Act, an executive agency has to vote to start a proceeding to say, okay, we're going to take comment from anybody and their mom who wants to write in and tell us this is a good idea, a bad idea, or make edits to it. So that docket, right, that ability to provide feedback to the commission begins now. Well, it begins when the thing hits the Federal Register in a couple weeks. And it will initiate what we think is going to be a 60-day review. And so during that review, you could write in. Any school could write in and say, this is what's really important about E-rate. We've got ways to do it at saveourerate.com. We've got a clearinghouse, a landing page that spells all this out. The other thing is we encourage people to contact their member of Congress and tell them, don't let or tell Chairman Carr not to kill the E-rate program. So we really are in a moment of activation where people who benefit the most, that know what's at stake, need to make their voices heard.
Well, we've got a couple listeners, I think, so we'll tell them to go fill out a comment.
Please.
Well, so let me ask you a little more mischievous question here. That 60-day time period is July and August, the time when school districts are the least connected to what's going on in the world, for great reason, right? So is this intentional for them to have this comment period be done during summer vacation?
They originally suggested 30 days.
Whoa!
And we said, no way. And so they did concede to elongate it till 60. But, Mark, there's going to be a reply period. So they do a 60-day first comment, and then we understand it to be a 90-day reply period, which comes after the 60 days. So that gives schools an opportunity for much of the late summer and fall to still submit comments. The docket will be open for about 5 months.
Okay, so it'll stay open during the review.
And we emphasize that over and over again in our meetings with commissioners, that you cannot have a comment period that closes before schools reopen.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's good to hear. So then we've got this comment period. We've got 60 days, then 90 days. We're into the fall. Obviously, we're not talking about changes to the E-rate program for next school year, for the next E-rate cycle. But realistically, what is a timeline where we might find more answers of what the FCC intends to do with this?
How do we know what they're going to do?
What's the timeline?
Oh, it's after the comment period.
But how quickly would those proposed changes, if they're approved, how quickly would they impact an E-rate cycle?
These are all unanswered questions. So figure there's a comment cycle well into the fall, and then once that period ends, the commission has to move quickly or not. They're under no obligation to finish the rulemaking. There are a number of many open rulemakings at the commission. So there's nothing forcing them to do this. So the question is, what is the political will? What is the political pressure following this comment period on the FCC to either move, to not move, to change their proposal? At the earliest, I would expect a potential final order to be proposed in early 27. And then your guess is as good as mine about when that would be effective. Is that for the 28 year, 29? No idea. I mean, that's the commission's discretion. I think the only other thing I would note here is that if they go too far, right, and they make some real fundamental changes to the program that, as you said, Mark, contravene the congressional intent in the 1996 Telecom Act, you better believe there will be some of us that are willing to sue and stop it and take our case to court.
But to that point, we just went through this last summer with the Supreme Court. Shouldn't the Supreme Court's ruling from last year stop any sort of action to actually eliminate the program, or are these just two separate things they're just trying to attack it from a different angle?
The issue last year was whether E-rate is constitutional. Or whether the Universal Service Fund as a whole is constitutional, E-rate being part of it. I don't want to get above my skis here, or the FCC has not taken final action. But part of the question will be, was the FCC right to end the program? Or does the FCC, will the FCC propose final rules that are too far afield from what they had proposed, preventing people to provide meaningful comments, which would be an APA violation? But again, this is 6, 9, 12 months from now. I think it's important to acknowledge. I think it's important to acknowledge that if Brendan Carr and FCC go all the way here, we would seek litigation, but also to say we don't want it to get there, right? We want to make sure people's voices are heard now and that they back down.
I can't imagine there's going to be too many people who are in agreement with the statement that E-rate's program goals have been met. But are there going to be comments and statements from different organizations out there that say, yes, it's time to get rid of the E-rate program? Do you anticipate that there is going to be that dissenting voice?
There is a conflation of issues that's happening right now. There's a real concern out there, and it is a real concern that children are spending too much time on screens.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
That's real.
Yeah.
I'm a parent with young children. That's real. The problem is, I don't think you should use a concern about screen time as a backdoor to cutting a connectivity program that benefits the most needy schools and libraries.
Agree.
They're not the same things. They're also conflating use of private mobile phones, essentially kids on cell phones, in intentional educational use. So the issue of screen time, totally worth having that conversation. And you will hear from people about their concerns about kids on screens. Mm-hmm. We just don't think it leads to the conclusion of cutting E-rates. There are other things that should happen at a state, local, and potentially federal level, at the Department of Education, at Health and Human Services. This is a larger issue than the FCC can tackle.
Joey, I don't know if you've heard, but the Department of Ed doesn't exist anymore, so they're
not
in it.
I'm going to leave the snarky comments to you.
I excel at that, so great. If this were to succeed and the E-rate program was deemed a success and we don't need it anymore, what would be the advantage to that? It's not like the average American would see a massive lowering of their tax bill. You're talking, what, 50 cents on a cell phone bill?
The impact would be a larger digital divide. It would be exactly what E-rate was trying to prevent. That if you're in an affluent suburb, you're going to be fine. Your discount level is low to nothing, and you'll find the money to continue to pay for internet connections. But if you're a 90%, 80%, 70%, where you're already in an environment of strained local and state budgets, that's just a cut to your budget. So that's less internet, or they're just cutting staff, or something else. That's the impact. I don't think that benefits our country. I know that doesn't benefit our students.
I just don't see the rationale that this is a good idea. This isn't a federally funded program. Like, it comes from that special tax, or it comes from the providers.
User fee.
User fee, thank you. It's not like this is going to lower the deficit, or it's not going to give me an extra $300 because I'm not paying as much federal tax. Like, this really is no advantage to stop for the average American taxpayer. It is, like you said, it will just make that divide for schools even bigger.
Correct. USF has succeeded for 30 years. It is an important program with enormous benefits. So let's continue it.
All right. So in terms of next steps, districts who are listening to this should be going to saveourerate.com. What can they find on this website?
It's going to tell you how to contact your congressperson. It's going to tell you how to contact your senator. And the website's going to tell you how to make your voice heard at the FCC.
And you want to hear from tech directors, CIOs, CTOs, superintendents, school boards, anything and everybody?
I want to hear from anybody who cares.
He said anybody and their mom. So your mom and grandma need to write in.
It could be grandma. It could be parents. It doesn't have to just be someone who works in a school. Anybody who cares about local education. Anybody who cares about having a library in their community, right? Because it's not just schools. E-rate funds libraries as well. Anybody who cares about these things. I think the more people that write in, the better.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's hope we don't have you back on here. Again, we love having you here, but when you do come,
I try not to be offended, but okay. I can come with good. How about I come back with good news that we've defeated this terrible proposal? Okay.
All right, we'll take that. We'll see you in a few months, and you can tell us how you defeated this proposal.
Well, look, all I can say to your listeners is this is important. This is really important. This is the biggest threat E-rate has faced since its inception 30 years ago. We need help. We need people to make their voices heard. Go to saveourerate.com. You can learn how to do it. We also have a webinar on July 16th that's a free webinar for anybody, SHLB members and non-members, we will walk through the issue, what's going on, and exactly how to make these comments. And I'd also tell your listeners, come to AnchorNets. We have an annual conference here in D.C. It's October 7 through 9, and we will be spending a lot of time on E-rate and what its future looks like and how do we ensure its future. And once we've secured its future, how do we make it better, including on cybersecurity and other issues. All this can be found at shelby.org.
Awesome. Thank you, Joey Wender from the Schools, Health, and Libraries Broadband Coalition, or SHLB.
Happy to do it.
See you soon.
We might not be the same. You share the same pain that I do.
The views and opinions expressed on the K-12 Tech Talk podcast are the personal opinions of Josh, Chris, and Mark, and do not represent the views or opinions of our sponsors or other organizations that we're affiliated with. The material and information presented here is for general information and entertainment purposes only. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
We were buying words about the phrase of the day.